Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that once snuck into a Huey Lewis in the News concert by simply following Bill Murray in. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let's take a look at GMT Games' Men of Iron Tri-Pack. Men of Iron Tri-Pack from GMT Games is a game that takes the three-game in the Men of Iron series, that's Men of Iron, Infidel, and Blood and Roses, and goes ahead and combines them into one package filled with dozens of scenarios. Now, I'm not going to really do a straightforward rules explanation because there's a lot of different rules and exceptions in these games, but just briefly let me tell you how it works. You have a number of counters representing different armies, various armies representing different historical scenarios, and you've got a ton of different scenarios in this game from kind of the Middle Ages, and a lot of different Men in Iron battling scenarios here. Both sides have a number of different types of units. They have different types of leaders, named leaders very often, and you can go ahead and take turns activating them in order to squash your enemy. Now, during the game, you have a battle, which is a specific group of units, and you have a battle leader, and you can go ahead and activate a battle. You can move them, attack with them. You have kind of a shock, meaning you're kind of crashing into them. You can go ahead and check out the shock rating, and based on your die roll, you can see whether or not you're successful in pushing through your enemies. There's also a rally phase where you can attempt to rally some of those units, but at the end you go toward a continuity phase. Now, the continuity phase is very interesting because the game doesn't play like a standard your turn, my turn, your turn. Rather, you have this continuity phase. Essentially, you're going to go ahead and move from one battle to another, but during the continuity phase, your opponent can attempt to, if you don't pass, he can attempt to seize continuity with a die roll. So in this way, like I say, battle does not just go back and forth necessarily. It's you activate one battle, again a group of units, and then you attempt to activate another battle, but your opponent can attempt to seize that from you, then they activate battle. And this kind of simulates the flow and the back and forth of battle rather than just simply activating all your units, and then they activate all of their units. Now, facing for units is important. Essentially, you've got the hexes, and two units in front of you are your front, your two units to the side are the flanks, and the two units behind are the rear, and that's going to have some penalties depending on if you're attacking the flank or the rear. Now, you'll also have the opportunity to continue with an attack. If you're successful, you'll have opportunities to counter. There's a lot of different things that can pop up in this game. So whoever is successful at meeting their objectives wins Men of Iron. So I'm just giving you just the basics of this. There is so much going on in this game. I'd really have to dive into a lot of the nuances and of individual games, individual scenarios and whatnot. And I just didn't want to do that. I just want to give you the overview and what I thought. And I've only played a couple of scenarios, so take that for what it is. But this game, the combat system is actually really interesting because, like I say, it's much more fluid than you would expect from a simple back and forth combat game, war game. It is, or many war games, I should say. But it's very interesting, and I like that a lot. I also like some of the ways in which the games end. You're tracking how many units have been killed sometimes, and keeping track on the board with that. There's a lot of interesting, like I say, nuances in individual scenarios. I've read through a lot of them. I got to tell you, the maps are paper, which I'm not a big fan of, but ordinarily right there, that really is a turnoff. But the thing about it here is they kind of have to be because there are so many scenarios with unique tiles, or I shouldn't say tiles. I mean, you could do this with a tile thing, with like a Command and Colors game, but with unique geographical features. And those are pretty cool because there are so many of them. There's so many geographical features that each scenario feels very different just from that. But then the units that you're employing, and again, you're going from kind of just knights on armor and horseback. Eventually, you get up to gunpowder. And just in the scenarios I played, there's a very different feel to the game with regard to those, with regard to counters and whatnot, and the units you're playing with, and leaders and whatnot. I think in a lot of ways this is a fairly basic war game in that it's not terribly complicated. But at the same time, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of exceptions that you do kind of have to look at. So I think ultimately it strikes a balance. It's not super simple, but the basics are simple to learn. But then a lot of some of the other things, there is a little bit of complexity and maybe a little bit of a learning curve in some places. But all told, I like this game. I think it's a good value for your money if you like this system, because you're getting all three of these games into one box. It's a pretty thick box, and I think that's pretty cool. And I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy Men of Iron Tri-Pack. I liked it personally. I can't say I loved it, but I enjoyed it. I think if you do like kind of the hex and counter war games, and you do like the medieval theme, I think you're really going to get it, and I think you're probably going to want to buy this one. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on BoardGame Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. We are The Discriminating Gamer, and you know that story I told you about the Huey Lewis concert, sneaking in behind Bill Murray to get in it? It didn't really happen. To me, it happened to my brother. True story. It was when Bill Murray owned the Salt Lake Trappers, and my brother was just walking down the street, and he saw this mob of people, and it was Bill Murray, and he just got in line behind him, and he went to a Huey Lewis concert, and everybody was able to just get in right with him. And so, anyway, I remember that happened when I was like, 9, and I thought it was pretty cool.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
My wife left me. My kids left me. My wife came back looking for the kids.